at, the corporate setting, or even honestly, I think in the nonprofit setting too, where like you're better able to meet that mission, whatever that mission is. It benefits everything from timelines, bottom lines, the well-being of the people, the creativity and innovation that's present. So it's not a nice to have, it's essential. And if we skip over that relationship piece and rely, as you said, on just the processes and the tools, to me it's like trying to cook dinner without salt. It's like, sure, I could do it. I mean, there's something there, but it's not nearly as magnificent or inspired or tasty as it would be if I had all of these ingredients together.
Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 19th of March, 2023. This is your host, Nigel Creasett, and this week I'm talking to Deb Mashek, the Collaborator. Speak soon. Today,
I was just doing this. Sorry, I was just going to do the same thing, like put it in front so I can make it look like I'm.
So you're looking at the camera, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
So it's all right. It's all right. Today I am delighted to welcome Dr. Deb Mashek, PhD. She is an experienced business advisor, professor, higher education administrator, and national non-profit executive. Previously full professor of social psychology at Harvey Mudd College. She is the author of Collabor, How to Build Incredibly Collaborative Relationships at Work, even if you'd rather work alone. Named as one of the top 35 women in higher education by diverse issues in higher education. She is featured in media outlets including the New York Times, The Atlantic, Business Week, the Hechinger Report, and Fortune. She writes regularly for Psychology Today. And she is the founder of Myco Consulting LLC, where she speaks, advises, and provides professional development to those who are seeking to build better relationships and better workplace collaborations. So, Deb, thank you for coming on the show and welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation, Nigel.
Yeah, so it was a no-brainer from when I saw the name of your book to have you on here. Tell us a little bit more about that's the bio, that's your PR. Tell us a little bit more about you and where you are and things like that. I think people will pick up from the accent that you're not from the UK, certainly, and obviously.
Well, my accent's a little confusing. So I live in New York City, but I grew up in the Midwest in Nebraska, so really the middle of the United States. And grew up in North Platte, Nebraska, a fairly rural community. So the big employers there were Walmart and the Union Pacific Railroad. So it was funny. I think it was last week I realized I never knew anybody who was a consultant or who was a CEO or, relevant to your audience, who was a project manager. It's fascinating how the lack of awareness about the range of opportunities and the range of communities that are really out there, how it frames what you think you're going to do when you grow up. So I never thought I would be a collaboration consultant, I guess is the bottom line there.
An accidental collaboration consultant.
Right.
Yeah, there's a few accidental project managers knocking around, I know, from the conversations I've had with people, including myself. I was a fail. I
was going to say it's interesting too because I mentioned this at the top of the book that I say my three great teachers of collaboration were the trailer park, my parents' alcoholism, and my PhD. So this idea that we, although accidental, you start to get shaped in terms of you learn about, in my case, I learned about the value of connecting with other people relationally and had to figure out kind of the nuances of that, and then went on to study that as my PhD is in the psychology of relationships. So this is totally my jam. And I point to, those early years in the trailer park trying to figure out, this was one of those cases where the parents would kind of boot all the kids out at 9 a.m. and you had to go play together. You had to figure out the social world. There weren't adults telling you what to play or what the rules were or how to apologize to Johnny if you upset him or something like that. And so, we were from a very young age, working collaboratively to co-create our games, our rules, the consequences of violating social norms, and doing it all within the confines of this trailer park where there was, the chain link fence kind of holding us all in. But I really do point to that as my early emergence in terms of my interest in collaboration.
That is actually fascinating, actually, hearing that, and it just pinged off loads of things. That whole thing of the kids going out, and I watched I know from myself when I was a kid, but it's a long time ago, so I don't have as clear a memory as watching my kids play. And I just realised I've got my youngest who's 11, and my niece who's 10 now, 9, 10. I keep forgetting 9. I think 9 she is.
Well, they keep changing. How annoying!
Yes,
they keep changing ages. Yeah.
Yeah, and they move so quickly because I'm still sitting there thinking she's 6, and I'm like, I know she's not 6, but and my girl's growing up really quick. But I just see them, and even my eldest with my dad, where you'll get a bunch of kids together, and if you watch them and you hear the imaginary games they're playing. And I never thought about it before until you said it there. It was around that deep collaborative effort that goes into that co-creation of that world, of that scenario, of the characters and everything there. It's like it kind of puts to shame a Marvel movie and the complexity sometimes when you watch them working out what they're doing there. And I just never thought about that before, about how those lessons that we learn in doing that through play. And I've got things like I've got Change Ninja there where they talk about Lego serious play in different parts of that. When I was talking to Tammy, that Lego serious, that act of play, that active imagination, like you say, just
well, and there's the other level too.
You either make those.
Yeah, so there's this other level too, though, because if you're the kid in that play group who's being a little jerk and telling everybody, no, this is what the Barbie's going to wear. She can only wear this outfit or only wear this. That kiddo is less likely to be invited back. So yeah, they're figuring out how not to be jerks because they're able to administer reasonable social consequences on people who are misbehaving. So this idea that we learn how to navigate and figure out some of those norms. And I don't know about what parenting looks like in the UK, but I know in the United States we have a lot of parental protectionism, or this idea that the parents are the ones who are stepping in and making the rules, or saying, okay, Sally, now you should say this to Susie so that she feels included. And totally in a good spirit, like in this way of trying to show kids the ropes. But one of the things I think we're taking away from our kids when we do that is to learn what works and why in those social dynamics. And so there's definitely a relationship there between how we play and how we collaborate.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know that, and you see the different dynamics and the different groups and different conversations that go on. And I agree, we could go down a big rabbit hole of the education and parenting and all that sort of thing around how you it's great. We have got a group of friends that a lot of us go together and we go off on a holiday, and it's one of the few times where we've got a range of ages from, well, now they're sort of from when we've been going, one's like 21, I think the eldest is, and the youngest are 5 or whatever, and that's the range of the kids. And then but when they were a little bit younger at age, we'd be there. We've got there was a big house that we get together. There's 8 families, 35 of us or something like that. And the kids are feral at that point. They just go, because they've got 16 parents in the building and around. So they're not, they're not having depending on just on you. They just kind of go, Auntie so-and-so, can you, and they've just done that. It's kind of the deed. But then the kids themselves, they're out and they're just working out games, they're doing it, and they're just, that massive group of kids manage to get on and have a great time.
And they look out for each other, and they know when things have escalated to the point where we need an adult to help because that kid's foot is on backwards or something like that. But mostly, they're figuring it out, and it means the parents are often getting a little bit of headspace. I spend my summers on an old school bungalow colony in upstate New York where it's 100 families living on a single property, and it's all like, I won't I don't know how much I'll just say it's the same sort of thing where the kids spill out and they're free range. So Lenore Skenazy, who is once titled America's Worst Mom because she let her 12-year-old ride the New York City subway alone, but she initiated this movement called free range parenting, and so people can learn about her at letgrow.org. But she's on this bungalow colony too, and she points to it as one of the free rangest places you can imagine, where the kids are playing in the mud and climbing the trees and creating really ornate games that my son tries to explain to me what those rules are, and I really don't get it. But yeah, how fun for them. Those are memories in the making for sure.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting because it immediately getting into sort of stuff. I sometimes think and second guess myself actually, and stop myself using analogies of our kids, of kids and the way that kids behave with adults and in the work environment, because I think that I'm always scared of people going, we're not children, we're grown-ups, and actually, and then I kind of retort, and sometimes I'd be thinking, well, you're not behaving like grown-ups, but actually, if I think about it properly, they're behaving like humans.
I was going to say, we're not children, we're not grown-ups, we're humans, we're very social creatures. And the wiring that's in there, we're learning how to navigate our social world really early on, and we're reinforced for some behaviors more than others, and we carry that learning into the office. It's not like it just, miraculously, I find these blowers really annoying, that you walk into a store and there's a really strong blower and it's to keep the insects out. I totally get the point of it, but it's not like when we walk from our personal lives into our work lives, that somehow there's a miracle blower there that gets rid of our habits of thinking and our habits of being and our habits of relating. We absolutely carry those into the workplace, and a lot of our insecurities as well as our strengths that we see manifest in our close relationships and at home are also present in the workplace.
Yeah, it's interesting to contextualize it in that way. So immediately, rabbit holes, I love them.
Woo! Hello, rabbit hole.
Well, I need to be careful because I know we've got a limit on time on it today. Otherwise, it would be here all night talking. So, thinking about your sort of background and give us a little mix. I know I talked a little bit from the trailer park. You talked about your parents there, and then moving through to other roles. What kind of how did you end up doing what you're doing there? Because there's obviously, it wasn't suddenly you've gone from there and gone, right, now I'm doing this. What was those steps that got you there?
Yeah, so a lot of serendipity, first of all, but when I went off to grad school, I just happened to be in the seminar my very first year called The Psychology of Close Relationships, and I thought I was going to graduate school to study the psychology of women's health behaviors. But then I landed in the seminar my very first year and absolutely fell in love with it. So I was the dork who read every single page, who had my hand up, teacher, well, professor, I have a comment, I have a question, and could not get enough of the content of the Psychology of Close Relationships course, such that by the end of just one semester, it was clear to me I needed to switch my emphasis. And so right away started studying all of these theoretical models about how it is we relate to other people, how it is our relationships with other people change our notions of ourself and who we are and how we show up in the world. And from there, I've studied everything from hooking up to breaking up, everything in between. And, for over, 25 years at this point, conducting research in this area, teaching undergraduate and graduate level courses, and also thinking about how these ideas apply out there in the real world. That obviously our relationships are not just theoretical constructs. They really, all of us are navigating workplace relationships and parent-child relationships and intimate relationships, all this stuff. So I went on from graduate school to a research fellowship at George Mason University. So it's a great big university outside of Washington, D.C. And there started to think about how these relationship theories connect with incarcerated persons' connections to the community at large and to the criminal community, and how fascinating it is that, we say we would like to reduce recidivism. But then we put people behind walls such that they can't maintain relationships with their families and their communities. Instead, they're socialized exclusively, often, with other people who are part of the criminal community. And what does that mean? And then after that fellowship, it was a 3-year fellowship. I moved from Washington, D.C., all the way across the country to California, where Harvey Mudd is located. And at that point started to think about how these relationship theories are also relevant to community building. It's at that point that I started to teach about the psychology of collaboration and trying to learn some of that literature. And at one point, so kind of like the Oxford model, the Claremont colleges, there's some similarities there that you've got these 5 undergraduate institutions that are co-located on a single square mile of property. So they're totally independent colleges, and the students can cross-register. So a student from Harvey Mudd can walk across the street to Pitzer or Pomona or Claremont McKenna or Scripps. And these colleges are all independent. So independent leadership, independent boards of trustees, independent finances. But there's a whole heck of a lot of potential sitting there when you have this many resources, the people as well as the money resources, as well as these incredible students and professors and staff. And the question comes up, well, what could you do together that none of you could do alone? So what would compel some collaboration? Why would it be in your interest to partner, say, with that other college across the street? And the deans of these 5 colleges received a grant to really study this very question and to figure out, well, how do we bring our shared resources together in a way that enhances all of us as individuals? So not like, how do you, in a self-sacrificial way, just be a martyr and go support the other colleges? Nothing like that. It was really like, how do you create relationships and projects and programs and services that make sense where it makes sense to come together in service to everybody's individual goals as well as shared goals. So they get this grant, and then they're like, hey, we're going to need someone to run this grant. Does anyone know anyone? And my dean happened to come to me and said, hey, Deb, would you be interested in this thing? And I knew in a heartbeat that, yeah, this is something I want to tackle. I could really see how it was going to connect. And was at that for 5 years. Absolutely loving it. We did all sorts of amazing things there together. And then the 2016 election happened in the United States. So this was the election where Donald Trump won over Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And campuses melted down. And we saw a lot of the nation melted down. And because a lot of people were surprised this had happened on campuses, people were feeling like people went into mourning and were wearing black. It was really very dramatic. And what I remember thinking is, wow, what, as a relationships person, what's going on that this feels so surprising to all of us? What does it mean about we're not being in connection with other people who have different viewpoints? And at that point, I decided to move cross country again. So I went from California, 3,000 miles away, to New York City. At this point, I'm a single mom. I've got an 8-year-old in tow. And I left my tenured full professorship to help launch a national nonprofit called Heterodox Academy, which was focused on bringing more viewpoint diversity and constructive disagreement to college campuses around really, but I guess the umbrella term would be the culture wars. So differences, political differences, religious differences, things like that. So I did that for 3 years. I got that organization off the ground, and then it decided that really what I wanted to spend some more time on was helping people build these collaborations. So that's when Myco launched. Sorry, you got all the stepping stones since you asked.
That's exactly what I wanted. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating journey. It's the fact that you've decided, right, I'm going to cover all of the states, middle, east, and west, and kind of just make sure you've covered them both. That's well done. I think that's good. A good technique. I don't know if you heard of I'm sure you would. The Baz Luhrmann song, "Wear Sunscreen," where it says, "Live in New York once, but don't stay long enough to make you hard, and live in Los Angeles once, but don't stay there long enough to make you soft." So you're kind of doing that kind of thing.
I like that. I'm going to have to look that one up. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's from the 80s, but it's a very good song, actually. It's really it's less sung and more spoken. But so obviously all of those things, and especially with the and the topic of your book, collaboration and building relationships kind of thing, with collaborative relationships, all of those facets of the human being is about collaboration, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's my daughter's sorting out the dishwasher, if it's me working with a team trying to deliver a big project, if it's you with your deans kind of parking their self-interest for that collaborative interest for the battle, or managing that together. It's collaboration all the time, isn't it? It's every single facet of our lives. We are collaborating with another human, and also there's always potential, if we're collaborating with another human, to fall out with that human, and the collaboration to fail.
Right. So a couple points to pull out there. One is this idea of what the heck is collaboration in the first place. So culturally, we use it in this very kind of generic way that it's any form of working together equals collaboration. And I don't think that's a horrible place to start, but it also makes it mushy a little bit. It makes it hard to talk about and hard to really pin down. So I use the definition that I proffer in the book and make use of, is that it's when you have two or more people who know each other and they're working together intentionally toward a shared goal. So that sounds very academic, but it gets away from things like, we just both happen to care about the environment and therefore we're collaborating to save the earth. It's like, well, if I've never met you and we're not being intentional or orchestrated in some way, then maybe we're investing in something that we both care about. But for me, that doesn't rise to the level of collaboration. And then when we start thinking about in the workplace, there are these kind of this gradient that underlies a lot of these relationships where, if you and I are just exchanging information, that's a form of working together. But Arthur Himmelman, who's an organizational development person, he calls that networking. He's like, that's not collaboration. You're just exchanging information. But then you can go a step up where now we're actually altering our activities in some way to meet a shared goal. And that's, coordinating. That's great. And then a step up from there where now, in addition to sharing or altering our activities, we're actually sharing resources. And this is when, turfiness can start to kick in. So my time, my talents, my treasure, that my people, my instruments, my data sets, things like that, where when we start to share those, now we're actually cooperating. And then a step up from there in his model is collaborating. And this is where, in addition to all those other pieces, we're also truly trying to learn from each other in the spirit of becoming better at what we do. So it's not that I'm right, you're wrong, I know how to do this and you don't know. It's like, hey, we're trying to do something together that none of us really know. Have we made space for that mutual learning? So that's one of the pieces there I think that's worth pulling out, is what is collaboration in the first place. And then one of the things I hope we have time to talk about today is it's also kind of a big black box for a lot of people. So it's hard because people are involved typically. There are obviously robot collaborations and all sorts of other cool things as well, but I like to talk about the people collaborations. And people are tricky, we're messy. And when you get a whole bunch of us in a room together and say, go do something, go make this work, there's not necessarily a roadmap for how to do the people parts of this.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's and the training and things like that on how to deal with those items. It's kind of you mentioned a quote. I don't know if you've got it there. That the project manager quote thing, which is it's exactly that, isn't it? You were talking about it earlier, weren't we? I don't remember. You've got it there.
Yeah,
haven't you?
I just opened it up. So this is a quote from the book when I was talking to somebody who's involved in a lot of project management and product development. And he said, there are people who are trained to project manage the crap out of the logistical parts and the technical parts, but the people parts, not at all. Or you mentioned that sometimes it's an afterthought, or it might be a part of the training, but it's maybe not as central as it could be. And, when I think about what does it mean to do together? So collaborate really means co-labor or together work, right? So what does it really mean to do together work? Well, you need to have people involved. You need to have processes involved. You need to have tools involved. And if I, again, totally biased here as a relationships person, if I had to pick one to optimize for first, I would optimize for the people first, knowing that really amazing colleagues, a really amazing team, they can do pretty incredible things even with crappy tools and processes. So I don't know if that's a hot take or whatever, but it seems to me very much worth investing in early and often.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I think it is. It's a thing I always say. You process, and I don't know whether it was me who said it or someone else said it, but processes, procedures never deliver projects. If you've got brilliant processes, you've got brilliant tools, you've got brilliant procedures, they ain't going to deliver a project. They ain't going to do anything. They're just going to sit there on a SharePoint site. The only thing that's going to actually make the things happen are the people. And if you don't focus, and some of those tools are there to enable better collaboration for the people. That's fine, I understand that. But sometimes it's a case of us understanding where the collaboration is, and it's really difficult because none of us like change. We all struggle with the concept of there's always that competitiveness, especially on scarce resources. There is always a thought of, well, if I give up this time or I give up that person to go and do that, I haven't got them for this, and therefore and being able to kind of, and as you say with the three colleges there, being able to see the common benefit and the in quote sacrifice of maybe a self-serving short-term goal for a wider serving long-term goal for the whole group is difficult for us to see, I think. And
yeah,
collaboration,
I'm a big fan of saying, like,
go on,
okay.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, we don't collaborate because it's fun or because it's, the right thing to do necessarily. We do it because it serves our interest, or it serves the interest of the company. And when collaboration really sizzles at, the corporate setting, or even honestly, I think in the nonprofit setting too, where like you're better able to meet that mission, whatever that mission is, it benefits everything from timelines, bottom lines, the well-being of the people, the creativity and innovation that's present. So it's not a nice to have, it's essential. And if we skip over that relationship piece and rely, as you said, on just the processes and the tools, to me it's like trying to cook dinner without salt. It's like, sure, I could do it. I mean, there's something there, but it's not nearly as magnificent or inspired or tasty as it would be if I had all of these ingredients together.
Yeah, and it's harder to do and things like that. I think with a lot of things with if you haven't got a level of focus. I'm doing a lot of training at the moment on it's Harvard-based training around being a connected manager and manager kind of stuff and dealing with people in different points. And I agree. There's a lot of it's really good. A lot of it, and I kind of disagreed with some bits of it, not a lot of it. But I think the thing of it's very much focused on the people. It's not focused on the procedures. It's not focused on in quotes, how to manage people. It's about relationships, about individuality, and that sort of thing, which is really encouraging, because a lot of training I've done way back wasn't so much about that individuality and about the relationship. It was a kind of, if you like, a sticking plaster to solve the problem of that person not doing what they need to do. And that's, I think in my profession, I think there is a change and a focus away. That the quote before, completely valid. I think there's a change away from that focus of. But there are. You're qualified in certain tooling, and a lot of it is the process, is the procedure. I think one of the ones like with PMI, I know, and I think APM's got it as well, is there is a much better focus now on that people side of it, and it being, and certainly with the continuing development kind of stuff as well, is around making sure that you've covered the topics of, because they need refreshing, because there's things change in society, things change in the way that we react, and new research and things like that. Whereas just going on a time management course back in the 80s which I did, isn't as useful now as it was then. Some of the principles were, but I have still got an old file of facts that I had from back in the 80s that they taught you this system to do it, and it's kind of, that tool is now redundant. The thinking behind it is still valid, but the tool's redundant. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. The tools move, the processes change. What needs to be done changes. The people bit doesn't really change. The focus and importance of it doesn't change, should I say. Well, I hope you enjoyed that first episode with Deb. Come back next week for the second part. Speak soon. Bye now. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this. You're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listen to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nige out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast. Send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well. And I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.